Despite being a big From slopper, I found myself not at all excited for Nightreign in the months leading up to its release. But I gave it a shot anyway, and I assembled the most crack team of Avengers on the face of the planet. The night reigned, but we were the storm. After beating every boss in both co-op and solo, I have to say, despite having many grievances with the balancing, repetitiveness with the small pool of repeat fights, and some of those fights making me absolutely despise them when I used to tolerate them, I had a lot of fun. What especially surprised me was how well the Nightlord bosses turn out to function for co-op, and I think ranking them will be an interesting change of pace since I've never done something like this before, and so I think it makes sense to establish what matters most in these encounters for me when I consider their quality. Number one, and most importantly, the co-op elements.
Jolly cooperation.
How well a boss adjusts to multiple players, how much you need to work together or strategize. So keep in mind I will not consider the experience of playing with randoms who you can't communicate with. It doesn't sound fun and I won't do it. Number two, the mechanics of the boss, their moveset and how fun it is on an individual level. 3, presentation, because few moments can beat shared jaw drops in your group when the sky itself falls on you.
This is so cool!
And 4, the solo experience. This is the least important aspect as I don't think it was their main goal to design them for it, but it's still a bonus if it does work, and I think it should if they have solo mode implemented. So with all that established, let us begin with the boss I like the least, which would be the 3-headed beast. You might be surprised it's not one of the more instantly hated bosses like Elden Beast's blue brother, but to reiterate, the co-op mechanics are what I care the most for, and in that regard Gladius is weaker than the rest. He does have wide-reaching attacks with a sword attached to a chain that ensures all players have to engage with it, and when the Cerberus-type beast splits into 3 separate wolves, it's clear it's entirely group-oriented to its very core. I think it's an interesting idea to have a phase where each member fights a separate wolf, and at times have all 3 hunt down one in specific, in which case all the other 2 can really do is watch their teammate run for dear life. It's not really teamwork, but it does play into the size of your group, and there's probably some strats you can utilize as a team. If you're playing solo though, the other 2 wolves tend to just stay back until it's time for the hunt down pattern, in which instance I do not like it. Not one bit. Having 3 red wolves or Radagon-esque pesky dogs jump around you is impossible to keep consistent track of, resulting in many instances of pretty much unavoidable damage, or at least damage I couldn't have known was coming. And on its own the wolf is kinda just alright, so there isn't much to be gained out of the solo experience, except extra difficulty. And for co-op, it's the least involving and challenging without as much cool factor as the rest. The 3-headed wolf is a pretty cool outline for a boss design, but there isn't much detail or personality to it, so he didn't leave as much of an impression as number 7, Maris. Maris at first made me think of the Garden of Ice scam mod with its Elden Beast reskin, Formless Odin, but thankfully it doesn't operate at all like that laser spam nightmare. It's quite chill actually. It calmly swims across the air like a whale in the ocean, while us players are stuck to the seafloor chasing after it. Now, I've heard some crazy things about Maris in the brief time he or she has existed.
The 4th Nightlord in particular is, I think, one of the worst From Software bosses we've seen since fucking Bed of Chaos. It's not like a gimmick boss or anything, it is just so boring.
I will agree that this boss is very boring for solo, but even then it is doable, be it with a bow or a melee weapon. One really neat thing is how damaging the tentacles on the ground will end up damaging the boss, so if you're not into the idea of running after it, there you go, you don't have to. And you can make the boss hit the tentacles itself. It lends itself even better for teamwork where you can have someone designated to tentacle slaying duty while others focus on the boss and call out for attention demanding stuff like the jellyfish bombs or the nuclear droplet, which can also be targeted separately. On top of that, you may have to plan out on who's on interrupt duty when Maris tries to put the entire group to sleep with an unavoidable status ailment mechanic. Seems a lot of people don't need help to be put to sleep here, but I for one think it's relaxing in a good way. And really aesthetically neat too with the underwater theme. As for the tier, I think both this and Gladius are like low good tier, high decent tier. It's really tough to decide. But number 6, Adel, I'm sure, is at the very least good tier. And it's another very cool boss design, being a dragon with a dinosaur-like face and a fucked up mouth, while moving like a headless chicken. Animations for this thing are a thing of beauty, and it's something I want to give props for the whole boss roster. Since it's going to take about 40 minutes each run, learning through purely trial and error is going to be very frustrating and time-wasting, so making it so that just paying close attention will allow you to intuitively dodge is something I'm very grateful for. At least, that is the experience I have had. However, Adel probably has the second least teamwork elements in place, and in Phase 1 he doesn't do much more than individually attack a targeted player, while the others just have to run after it. It's very fun for the targeted player, with impactful attacks like grabs and multi-bite attacks that reward good positioning, but the others may get jealous for the lack of attention. That said, getting grabbed does allow for a swift rescue operation where you can stagger the boss out of chewing the caught player, and Phase 2's gravity AoEs help getting everyone involved. And I like how there's a safe zone right around the face of the boss during these attacks. So well-timed dodging is rewarded for melee, and for ranged, it's the AoE itself you have to worry about. So it works almost equally as well for solo, with the only exception that you're out of luck if you get grabbed. One interaction I really liked was how, with Adel being weak to poison, he can throw up to get rid of it, turning it into an attack as well. For most other bosses, the use of a specific element they're weak to doesn't alter the fight's quality much, but I still think it always adds a lot to the run-up to have an incentive to pick up different weapons. If you're sad to see the gaping jaw not make it to great tier, don't you worry, because apparently FromSoft is holding out on releasing crazier versions of these bosses, and based on the insane music reserved for Phase 3 of Adel, I can't fucking wait. Number 5 is Fissure in the Fog, Caligo. A classic FromSoft dragon boss, but specifically designed for co-op, and honestly, even the base dragons work better for groups than solo. Even still, Caligo is far more fun than the average Elden Ring dragon for single player, especially with bow and arrow, which for once is a fun combat style if you're using Iron Eye. Targeting the head with melee may get disorienting, so for that I recommend swapping back and forth between the legs and the head without lock-on. What I love about Caligo is how much positioning is involved for the frost breath attacks, wing upheavals, icicles on the ground, and exploding blocks of ice. As you may have guessed, these work fantastic for co-op. But the most teamwork potential comes from the 2 attacks Caligo can do after first disappearing into the fog, before returning with either a ceiling of ice above you, or a snowstorm you can hide from behind pillars. For the first one, having someone with a keen ear is super useful, as with good headphones you can kinda tell where the epicenter of the ice ceiling is, which will have a safe gap to survive the falling icicles, so having that player call it out and others follow him is a good strategy. But if you've got shit hearing like me, you can still iframe it. Snowstorm won't be too tricky, but it's cool that a raider can prop up his own pillar in a pinch. While the boss design itself doesn't stand out much from the usual FromSoft dragon, I think the music alone carries the presentation to the top. Personally for me, this is by far the game's best soundtrack, I absolutely adore it. After the snooze-fest dragon from Kazan, it was nice to be reminded of the valor of Knighthood's greatest calling again. Number 4 continues the trend of me having absolutely no idea how to rate the boss. It's either high good or low great. It varies too much from run to run for me to be completely certain, but for the cuteness factor I am leaning towards great for Gnoster, which kinda sounds like a made up slur. And that slur should be used against those who dislike this boss because, come on, how can you not like a moth riding a fat scorpion? It's a really unique duo fight where at first they fight separately, and if you have a ranged player, it may be smart to have them focus solely on the moth while the others battle the big guy. What I was most curious about was how this would work for solo. Would it be complete bullshit or a tedious waiting game? Turns out it's neither of those at all. You can use the big bug as a shield from the moth, even hiding underneath it when it's raining spells. At times the big one will either harden its shell or burrow underground, and that's when you switch focus on the moth. It's less often available for melee punish, but still doable. For Phase 2 the moth nests on the big bug and it turns into what I could only describe as an armored core boss. It's straight up a tank equipped with missiles, and fighting it feels like foot soldiers trying to dismantle one such vehicle, having to utilize their freer mobility to outmaneuver it. And when fighting the bugs up close, the really cool thing is how the moth's attacks combo with the slow slams of the big boy, and they follow the same trajectory, making it so you constantly have to reposition. It makes it work well for groups, and equally as well for solo. Only thing I could do without is the poorly telegraphed roar attack. It's an insanely novel experience, which is impressive after FromSoft has done over 200 bosses, yet none is even remotely similar to this. Even the music is very different, it feels more whimsical and cheerful for once. It's like celebrating the unification of the 2 bugs, who are both the last of their species. So just be mindful of your positioning fighting these 2, enjoy the novelty of the situation, and don't be a not. At 3rd place we have a boss that took some time to grow on me before reaching certified greatness, that being Fulghor, a one-armed centaur with a blue butthole. I would say in terms of aesthetics he's not quite on the level of the previous 4, Music, while absolutely top tier amazing, doesn't quite beat Caligo's, and his holy attacks don't contrast well with the light ground, making it sometimes difficult to discern between safe zones and area denial. But holy shit does this guy have juicy flow! That's always an odd thing to describe in boss rankings because the pacing and feel of the flow of the fight is so hard to pinpoint and it's super subjective. It's just a thing you know is there when it is. When people say a boss fight feels like a dance, that's probably what they refer to. But the beauty of it is that here you get a whole group dance going. Fulghor likes running in and out of range, sending shockwaves from his spear, or charging back in with a wind slice, and he can combo these with holy spears erupting from the ground, the effect of which will alter if a player does a heavy attack on him. The goopy Udex Gundyr-esque Fathom enhances his toolkit even more, but I gotta say there's nothing to be gained out of doing this one solo that won't be better with friends. The inclusion of other players is kinda what creates so many variables for what's an otherwise mechanically simple fight, with the possibility of the boss changing targets mid-combo. For bosses ranked below Fulghor, that doesn't come through as strongly, and that's why I think he's the first definite great tier fight, and I could see it getting even better over time, especially with the upcoming updates. Now for the spiciest take of them all, I have the final Nightlord, Heolstor, ranked at number 2 instead of 1. And I'm still hesitant to call it amazing tier. I don't mean to ruffle feathers by going against the grain. I've seen people who think he's like top 10 or even top 5 best Soulsborne bosses ever, but I just don't really see that, and I feel like he was manufactured to be exactly what people ask for in a way that feels almost fanservice-y, or artificial, like it is its only purpose to make people soy at the surface level elements. I know he has some actual lore, but he does kinda feel like someone's edgy OC, like you put Artorias, Gale, Pontiff, Soul of Cinder, and all these cool bosses everyone loves into a blender, and this is what came out. It is really cool with an incredible soundtrack, as well as being visually striking, especially when he splits the sky and assumes the power of the previous Nightlords. But I don't know, after all the other bosses felt so unique to this game, this one felt like a return to form that I personally didn't need and didn't really feel was earned with the lack of ostensible build-up. But I suppose it is novel to see classic epic final boss concept done in a group setting, where once again the mechanical complexity comes from the target switching mid-combo, which will alter how everyone needs to react to the after effects on the ground. Those are by far the best thing about the fight, and I'm sad whenever he's done using them. So again, not one I recommend for solo where his simplicity is exposed. He won't require a whole lot of teamwork, but everyone needs to stay vigilant at all times, in no small part due to the odd delays and floaty movement he has. That floaty movement though does have some flow trademark, so I do really like the fight overall. I myself may not have audibly gasped at the spectacle, but many others in the call did, and I'm glad to have shared that moment with them. So I don't want to shit on anyone's parade, I'm glad he's in the history books for many players. But right now, my eye is on Libra. This one definitely wins for unique factor, and out of all the Nightlords, I think he has the most personality going for him. He's a mad goat, making deals with people that give something to you, but also take something away from you, which is a fun idea, even if most of the time I find them not worth the trade-off. His whole theme, as you may guess from his name alone, is balance, and it comes through in his entire being, all the way down to the visuals and music. He's equal parts a towering spellcaster and a rampaging out-of-control beast, and the music highlights this by alternating between all-out chaos and methodical drums. It's such a unique vibe with an Eastern sound given to the music. He has a limited number of moves and patterns, but dealing with them and how they can overlap is the most complex Nightreign's bosses ever get, and their complexity is influenced by your choices and competency. Libra will attempt a ritual that buffs his spellcasting powers, but it can be interrupted by either knocking him out of it by a mighty blow, like the Raider's Punch, or by destroying the surrounding sigils. It can get tricky with the sigils sometimes being placed above ground, and might not be possible to reach without a ranged player. But should you be successful in interrupting it, you instead have to survive this relentless melee aggression. It feels like a give-and-take situation again, since it's more likely you can interrupt the ritual with ranged classes, but ranged classes are less ideal for what comes next. Conversely, the buffed up spell madness is absolute chaos, and getting in melee range won't be easy. And just for good measure, they threw in a spell that will quickly build up frenzy for everyone, requiring each player to run around collecting golden particles in order to reduce it. And a bit of coordination may help so you don't all gun for the same particles and leave someone mad. And speaking of madness, in true fashion to Libra's give-and-take philosophy, he's just as weak to frenzy as he is skilled in its usage. I would again sadly have to say this boss doesn't benefit from solo play as it reduces the depth of so many mechanics, but as said at the beginning, it's nowhere near as important as the co-op, which they nailed along with making this the most well-realized and thematically cohesive boss. It's amazing, it's goated. So how's Nightrein's boss roster overall? I'd say good, with no subpar fight, for co-op anyway. Just about each being extremely unique and memorable, each soundtrack being at the very least good, and some nice teamwork and positioning elements in place. Mechanically, none of them are very complex, and that would have to be for the 40-minute run-back concerns, as well as the depth coming from the variables created by the spread aggro. I still hope for more complex and challenging fights, which is why I am very excited to see the enhanced versions they're working on. I'll probably come back to discuss that, but first I may have to tackle the Lies of P DLC. Once I can stop myself from playing the Neo 3 demo, it's just too addicting.